Thank you for making some time for this conversation today, Chris. And I got to give Andrew a shout out as well for recommending you. He was fantastic to speak to. But where do you two know each other from, by the way?
Well, I've been in career development for a while now, probably closer to 15 years. So when I first had met Andrew, it was in the career development world. Of course, he works in promoting career life skills, tools, and products. So back in 2009, it seems like a lifetime ago, the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, which is a psychometric assessment, was opened up. And that was the very first year you did not have to have a master's degree in psychology to be certified. So I became certified because I do not have a master's degree. And
Ah,
through some of these conversations, I've always kept in touch with Andrew. He has such an amazing and insightful worldview into career development, strategic career processes. A really great guy to talk with.
absolutely. That's great to hear. It's a tight-knit community. I find that the more of these conversations I have, the more obvious it becomes that uh, how supportive each member of this community is. Everyone seems to
Yeah,
know each other or have crossed paths with each other at some point. So
yeah,
again, I'm glad he mentioned you and that I get a chance to kind of
yeah,
hear about your experience now. So
yeah.
the first
Thank you.
question I always like to ask, and I know you touched on this a little bit uh, before we started our
Yeah,
episode today, but I like to know, what your career journey has been like. What kind of things have you done along the way?
yeah,
Um, and I'm excited to hear your answer to this because I remember reading a bit about
yeah,
what you've done along the
yeah.
way, but people love hearing,
Oh,
that,
absolutely.
yeah. So if you don't mind telling me,
No,
that'd be
no,
amazing.
it's so Imran, thank you for asking. What a great question. And it's very personal to live my authentic self. And just before I answer, just wanted to really sincerely thank you for that. So I've tried to live my life by saying that you can do anything you want until somebody tries to stop you. Try to be sure it's not
That's
you.
true, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
So
Wow.
it came out in my early formative years. I had studied music and I thought, well, I'm going to be a music teacher. That's what I'll do. 14 years old. I'm playing with the London Youth Symphony here. It was very well known. 16 years old, I'm invited to play with the Western Symphony Orchestra. So
No
I was
way.
fairly good. But I got into
Oh,
Western, and my first year at Western, I figured, wow, this is really a bad choice for me. This is just terrible.
oh,
I
really?
would spend Fridays at the Spoke drinking beer listening to comedy instead of going to history class. I paid for it, so I took the
Ah,
year and it was good. And then no, it didn't happen. And then I had a young family, so I did restaurant and I did service, and I was all types of things in the restaurant. I worked the back of the house, I worked the front of the house. I was a dining room manager, learned a short order cook. I learned all about procurement and about food wastage there. I was about 9 years. And in between there, I also started working in a factory. And that was very interesting. I was there about 18 years and multiple owners. It was unionized. I ended up being the occupational health and safety specialist there. I was a joint health and safety co-chair elected for about 16 out of the 18 years I was there. I was the elected plant chairperson for about 9 years out of the 16 years I was there. The place ended up closing, which was unfortunate. Probably about 240 odd people that were affected, both hourly and management. So at this
man,
time, the government had stepped in and said, look, we want taxpayers. So we want to help you help them do earn jobs again. And I said, okay.
I see.
Yes, we started an action center. That's the point of it. So if you can imagine a small business coupled with a group of people that some of them had been there 20 years, some of them they were making $22 on average back in 2007. So this was a while ago, very good wage, full benefits,
Absolutely.
and then the new reality hit. So there's no guidebook, so it's entrepreneurial. So I ended up being the person there that was involved when Second Career came. So this was a funding model from the government to help long tenured workers rejig and re-educate into a second career.
That's
So
amazing.
I didn't like what they were doing. Well, mainly because the people I was serving didn't like it. So we got together a focus group and we organized action centers all across southwestern Ontario to talk to the government policymakers to tell them this is just not going to work. We need to improve your system. It ended up going from about 16 weeks down to about 6. Ended up going from a 30-page legal size application down to about 18, and about 7 of those were very form fitting in terms of, put your job search in, do these other things. At the end of the day, people won, and that's all that counts. Our target for it's an intervention, so it's a beginning and an end. Our target was 75% adjustment. We did 92. So many of our people went on to jobs that were just as good or even better suited for them. That got me into the community, started doing all sorts of stuff there. I joined. So I just wanted to give a message out to people that are job seeking. Don't be afraid to try something different. Here I am, absolutely brand new, joining in the community service, never done it before. And I said to my manager, look, I really want to figure out how this works. What do I do? He says, well, if you're interested, there's a youth conference that's going on in Niagara Falls. And I missed it by about that much. And I said, I missed it. What's next? He said, well, there's an annual conference called Connexus. Okay, so I
Yes.
checked it out. I'm like, oh my, that's expensive. This is going to cost me $1,000 to go there. Well, how do
Right.
I get there for free? So I just talked to people and I said, well, if you volunteer to do something, usually you get to attend. And I said, sounds good to me. That's worth $400. So I did. And then I got into Connexus and I started talking to Jazz Brune and Riz Ibrahim and some of the other people that were running Connexus. And I said, this is great. I'd love to be a part of this. What do I do? And they said, well, what can you do? I said, I'll do what you need. So I ended up being a speaker. Then I was invited into their marketing committee a few years later. I became a author in their career magazine. Just don't
Wow.
be afraid to ask, because the worst answer will be no. But even worse than that is wondering what might have happened if you asked. So there's so many things you can do. It's just having the ability to feel that I'm going to make a mistake or 5, and that's okay. That's how you learn. Never be afraid to make a mistake. Always admit it quickly and then try to course correct. You spend far more time trying to adjust that mistake from happening. Set it on fire and then say, oh, wow, that was a bad idea. Let's not do that again. You're going to spend 2 minutes doing that, and you're not going to waste everybody's time. So one of the rules I've
True.
lived by is that I am not the expert. There's an old saying, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're likely in the wrong room. I try
I
to
like that one.
change rooms on a frequent basis. I always try to ask, what can I do? How can I be of service? What do you need? I'm going to help you get what you want so I can get what I need, and we're both going to thrive. I've just found that tenet to be very useful in everything I do. Thanks, Imran. That was a rather long answer, but I did have a lot to
No.
share there. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Chris. I mean, that's the beauty of this question is just hearing that the journey is always unique. And I think, there's a mentality that needs to change, and it's no one's fault, but I think people think they're going to go to school for a certain discipline, and then they're going to work in that field. But I just think it's so encouraging to hear that, that might be the way you start, but that it is possible to change halfway through and then change again at some point when your
Yeah,
needs change. And I really like
yeah.
that quote of yours. Can you just remind me the wording you put that together, that you can do anything you want, quote you had?
You can do anything you want until somebody tries to stop you. Make sure that it's not you.
I
For
just
an
think that
example, again, I'm here. I am in career development. I'm an old union guy, and we're not that shy. We share our opinions pretty openly. I was invited to sit on a steering committee for the career development practitioner reintroduction, the third kick at the cat for Fanshawe College. So I'm sitting
Yeah.
there and watching these very educated people discourse on this topic, and I stuck my hand up and I asked them, I said, "So are you guys serious this time? What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, it's the third time and I haven't heard you're doing anything new yet. So I'm just curious, if you do the same thing, you're going to get the same result. How are we going to differentiate? How are we going to identify our target demographic and give them the support and ideals that they need to choose Fanshawe over?" Because, oh, that's interesting. I get a call about 2 months later. "Hey, Chris, we really liked your ideas." I said, "That's great. Thank you. I've got more." And they said, "Well, that's good because we want you to design some of the courses and we're looking for a professor. Would you be interested?" I said, "Interested, delighted, tickled pink, and 9 other colors." So let me tell you the secret. I don't have a graduate diploma from Fanshawe yet. I taught the postgraduate program and developed it. And almost 9 years later, they're still using most of my material. Don't ever let a certification hold you back. If you have the skills and abilities, remember, there was somebody that had to design that certification that you're working towards. Somebody somewhere didn't know what they were doing until there was a frame. So if you can fit in the frame, just move ahead and figure it out as you go. And I jokingly tell people, look, once you get invited in, they've got to help you because now they're going to look like the fool for letting you in. So they've got skin in the game now too. You just got to get in the door. After that, you got to network. It's all good.
That's an amazing example, and so true to your quote there of, don't be the person that stops you. I think
No,
certifications and things like that often overwhelm people, that you need a certain pedigree or you need a certain background to be qualified to try. Maybe you do need it at some point along the way, but you don't need to stop yourself from trying in
no,
general.
no.
So that's such a helpful reminder. Um,
Yeah, there
yeah,
are certain sectors where you absolutely need certification because somebody else is in a vulnerable position with what you're doing. So anything in the medical field or skilled
of
trades
course.
or such that demands a certification, well, okay, but is that necessarily true for you to be an idea person, to be the word entrepreneur really translates into managing an idea. So I think we're all entrepreneurs. I've
That's a
always
good
said
way to
that I
put it.
work for myself. It just so happens my paycheck is by my employer. The work
Right.
I do and how I do it, though, matters to me.
I think that's going to help give people direction in terms of, what they try doing next. I think the focus of a lot of people that watch our podcast is trying to find that sense of direction. Um, and I like what you said, you've changed, in drastic ways throughout your career. So
Yeah.
when people come to you, at that point in their career where they're trying to figure out what to do next, what sorts of how do you guide them through that in your experience, Chris? What sorts of questions do you ask them to help identify what they're going to do next, and
Yeah.
how they're going to take some next steps?
One of the first questions I always like to ask people is, what are you proud of? When we're proud of something, it's a showcase of adversity or we've overcome something, we've won the day. And then I like to ask them, so let's take the opposite of that. What do you really not want to tell me that's happened? What's a lesson? So we do an alpha to omega here. We do the best of the best and the worst of the worst.
Oh,
And then I ask them to think about those instances and how they felt. So how did you feel when, what words are you going to use? And what tasks, what techniques, what things did you do? And we start telling stories to each other. So I will listen to their story and I'll write some words down. So I look at their story, I look at just the base elements of it. What did you do? When did you do it? What happened because of it? Those 5 W's. And in the midst of listening, I'll write down their skills and abilities. Usually, on average, I can come up with about 30 to 40 skills and abilities from one very short story. And then we look into that and we say, well, how did you feel doing this? It's all about emotion. It's all about the feel and how you felt. Because if you figure out that why, you can endure anyhow. That's a bit of a modification of a quotation from a philosopher, Nietzsche. who was not very friendly or nice, but I've always liked that quote. So
Agreed.
it starts and ends with stories, Imran. One of the things that we need to remember as people is that we tell stories. This is an Aboriginal thing. This is an Indigenous thing. Since the record of time that we've started keeping it, what did we do? We told stories. We've had lore keepers and fire keepers. Then we painted on walls and caves. Then we chipped out stone tablets. We teach each other through stories. Why are we not teaching ourselves?
It's a
We can
great
go
point.
we can go through
And
all the formal assessments,
yeah,
but it's not as good as a story.
it's funny you say that because I was thinking about that recently. And, I know I personally have undervalued the power of stories, even though I am someone who loves stories. I love music. So I have questions for you about your music
Yeah.
past at some point. I love movies. And I was thinking about, just what you said maybe about a month ago and recognizing that even now, when you look at social media and things like Instagram, the core functionality is to post, is to literally post stories. And it's
Correct.
it's called that, I think, for exactly the reason you're talking
Correct.
about is because
Yeah.
that's what resonates with people. So
Yeah.
it's not changed. It's
No.
it's at the core of how we connect with each other. So that is such a helpful thing to hear, Chris.
One
And
of
I
the
just, oh, go ahead.
you go ahead, Imran. I don't want to interrupt. I apologize.
No, no, I really like your guiding questions, the alpha and omega approach you spoke about a second ago. I understand the concept of, what are you proud of? Can you talk a little bit more about the other side of things? Because that's not an approach I've heard before, and it sounds
Yeah.
extremely helpful.
What we want to do when we first meet people, there's always a judging component. This is the social contract that we have is we have a new relationship energy and a new role and a new job and a new team and a new family member. It takes a while before we feel comfortable enough to show them that weird birthmark on our shoulder with the hair growing out of it, whatever blemish you have that you consider. And then they see it and they go, oh, yeah, you think that's right? Look at this.
Uh,
So part of the process is to humanize. What we're doing is job seeking, because when people are seeking new roles, they're very vulnerable. They feel defeated. They feel as if they've done something wrong. And that's going to sit there and it's going to have a weight. So what we do when we're counseling folks, we first we put some air in the tires, and then we lean in and we poke the bruise a little bit, and we say, okay, so what really went sideways here? Because we need to figure out what we're not going to do the next time. Many times I'm talking to people, we're telling the stories, and they're very frustrated. I don't know what to do. I say, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take your statement and we're going to put a hinge on the end. What's that? I said, it's simple. It's three letters and one word. Yet. I don't know what to do yet. So we're going to reframe this and we're going to look forward. You don't know. Of course, you don't know what to do. We haven't been there yet. We haven't gotten there yet. We haven't figured this out yet. Well, of course. So by allowing them to have their pride and allowing them to have their feelings of goodness, you're also now going to build in a feeling of safety as a counseling individual to say, it's okay. You can trust me. We're not going to judge you. And we're just going to figure out what to avoid the next time. And it may be that they've been in a role that they were just going through the motions for years and hated it and didn't know how to manage it, didn't know how to get out of it. Many times, what I see as a constant is people are unaware of how to handle conflict in a positive way. Being a union steward, I've got several tools in my toolbox. Some of them look like hammers, but one of the best tools to use is just a simple sound. Oh, so somebody says, Imran, I really did not like what you did here. And Imran, you can simply say, oh, and then you wait. You've addressed it, and now you're ping-ponging the conversation back to them. So somebody will say something to me, perhaps, where they're very upset about something. And can you imagine what happened? You imagine how I felt? Oh, And it's just a really wonderful way to lead
Yeah,
into the next part. It's a wonderful way to keep the story going without me becoming the narrator. It's not my story, it's theirs. Tell
that
yourself your stories, but in sometimes you're going to be the villain in somebody's story no matter how hard you try, and that's just okay. That's being human. What you want to do is figure out who you do not want to be, figure out the opposite of who you want to be, and become that arch villain. Do everything you can to destroy that persona. Just if you think that I'm not good at conflict, oh well, here comes conflict man, and he's going to generate some tools. And if you don't have an idea, well, this is a way to get one. Go listen to a great podcast like this. Chock full of ideas.
absolutely. Well, thanks for saying that, Chris, and thanks for explaining that concept. Um, it seems so simple when you explain it that way, but it truly isn't an approach I have heard before, which is surprising because I think that would be so clarifying for people. And I'm going to reflect on that myself personally and think
Yeah.
about, what went wrong? What do I want to
Yeah.
avoid happening next? I think that's such a useful
Yeah.
strategy, and I am curious what people come up with from that. Um,
Yeah.
because I think that can be as useful, and I expect it to be more approachable than, what do you want to do? I think that can be daunting for people sometimes too, even though it's exciting. I often hear job seekers, um, shrink a little from that question. What do you want to do? You
Yes.
can do anything. And it's a bit big, but what do you want to avoid? I feel like people are just, they are ready to say something about what they don't want to do. And that can get them a little closer, I hope.
With over 5,000 career sectors and 30,000 jobs, and jobs coming out today, we didn't even know. You go back 15 years, there was no such thing as a social media manager. And now AI has tipped that apple cart on its side with people leveraging AI tools. Okay, so the permanent thing about your life is it's not permanent. You can do anything you want. You just have to decide what it is and what you're willing, what's the price. So, my wife and I, we had a game we played when we were younger, not so much now because I'm a little older, but it's called Pay the Price. So, you figure out little games to play when you don't have a lot of money. So, this was back in the early 1990s. It was a while ago. And I wanted this video game called Total Annihilation. And it was a computer game, first 3D animated by Cave Dog. Loved it. Well, we didn't have a lot of money. And it was back then, it was $65. That was a lot of money. And I said, I'd really like this game. She says, well, you got to pay the price. I said, oh, okay. Well, what's that? She's like, I'm feeling three somersaults. So we were in the middle of a department store. I had to pull off three somersaults, ended up hitting a rack of clothes, got my game. So it's a price. So was I willing to pay that price? Now, that was a very safe price to pay. But what is the price? Is it 5 years of school? Is it $100,000 in certifications? Is it talking to somebody new and that just makes my mouth go dry? What's the price? Everything you want is on the other side of that price. So you need to decide, can I pay it? And if it takes 5 years, well, now you have two choices in 5 years. You can say, man, I'm glad I started 5 years ago. Or you can say, I wonder what might have happened if I had started 5 years ago. It is very black and white. So tell yourself the story, be your own hero. I tell people when they don't know what to do, well, let's pretend that you're 95 years old, writing the book of your life, telling your grandkids, your great grandkids, what do you want to tell them? What are the great stories that you have? Everything's about stories.
So true. And another, so well phrased, Chris, just to put it that way, I think that's a great game. Play the price, and I, I,
It's
I hope I think that's fantastic, and I do hope people, play that internally, play that with each other. For those watching this one, I would recommend giving that a try. I'm gonna try that.
it's a lot of
It,
fun.
it yeah, it puts a fun spin on, things that can be difficult, and in that situation, I mean, what a great way to get the game. Um, and that's why I said, even at the beginning of this, I know we're gonna have to have you back on for future episodes
Oh,
because I'd love to
yeah.
hear
Thank
what
you.
games
Thank
you're
you.
playing now. But
Well, and,
I know
and
we're at the
it's Well,
Oh, go ahead.
stories, I wanted to hit upon stories just briefly as well. So, in
Yeah.
an interview setting, one of the
Yeah.
things you're going to do is you're going to tell those stories, you're going to pick them apart, figure out your skills, abilities, skabilities, figure out how people felt. Now, when you're in the interview and they say, Imran, tell me about a time when,
Right.
you've got your story. And that story just told you 30 times when. Don't try to memorize questions you have no idea they're going to ask. Memorize outcomes of the stories you've done that make you feel good to tell. That will get you further in the interview. So learn how to tell a story to answer the question. It's about an outcome, it's about a feeling. And that's one of the, I was very excited to read more about your tool because what an amazing tool to have people pay the price. What's the price? I'm sitting here in front of a system getting feedback and it's private. I'm just going to get better and better and better. That's the price, is your time. What an amazing trade.
Well, thank you so much for saying that, Chris. And I do hope people find that a safe place to practice exactly like you're saying. But thanks for also connecting that dot for us because I remember you said earlier, right? You know, if someone comes to you and shares a story, you can pull 30 or 40 different skills out just from
Correct.
listening to them. And I'm not sure that, you know, I have made that connection for people listening to this because I think the impulse is to list those skills or try to say I am organized, I'm a team player. But how elegant to just tell a story you're excited about and have the other person recognize all those things without you having to list them. Just another great reason to tell a story, and I just think that's clarifying that you put it that way. So thank you for again just making it easy to understand and
Absolutely.
take a step towards doing things a little differently, and a little more human. It feels like.
Well, and that's what we're all in here. We all come in the same way. We all have a certain time. We leave the same way. Uh, and you're absolutely correct. Everything is about marketing an idea for somebody else to buy. I don't necessarily consider it interviewing as much as it is permission marketing. You're trying to give them permission to ask you into the team. I would facilitate workshops and I'd pick somebody and I'd say, hey, I'm having some problems at home. I need a place to live. Can I come live at your house? No. Well, why not? I'm a good guy. We've been talking here for like half an hour. How come? What's going on? Yeah. Well, I don't know who you are. I said, well, you've had all types of time. You've had 40 minutes to talk to me. That's what a job interview is. You're inviting me into your home with your, and you may like me, but if the cat doesn't like me, well, the cat was here before me. So what you're doing is permission marketing. You're not necessarily convincing, you're showcasing. You're not marketing as much as you are relieving them of the pressure that I can invite Imran in. He's a good guy, doesn't leave his towels on the floor. He has a penchant for spicy food, which I also love. Can't keep the brother away from roasted garlic mashed potatoes. I love that. So there's little things that we do. So the job interview isn't as much about, there's only a couple of questions they're asking. The resume says you can do the job. All it does is tell them where you live and a couple of things you've done on paper. But now the interview tells them, do I like you? Does the team like you? Do you like us? And that's where practicing makes such a critical component.
Absolutely. And again, that's I think it just puts a different thought process behind what the interview is. And it's so true. You know, whenever someone new comes to our team, uh, it is always a question of, do you think we can get along? Do you think they'll fit in? The skill is almost, that's a given that they have the skill to do the job, but then an equally important element, and maybe slightly more, is can we work together? Um,
Yes.
so that's such an interesting point to make there as well, Chris. And I know we're at the end of the time I asked you for today. There are so many things that you sent me that I wanted to get into to hear stories about people you've worked with, but I am cognizant of the time I asked you for. So I hope you'll come back for a second episode. Um, and truly, thank you for the insights you shared today. I think it's going to clarify things for so many people because these are concepts that there are lots of different approaches for um, how to share what you're capable of with people, how to figure out what you want to do. Um, and I really liked your approach to it. So I'm very grateful we had the chance to speak
Sure.
today.
Oh, I appreciate you, Imran. This was absolutely the highlight of my week and the last such it's just so wonderful to talk to people that are able to have an audience that's engaged and excited to see, well, what else?
Yeah.
And that's one question I always, the wow question. This is not my question. This is from a coach of coaches, Michael Bungay Steiner. And the wow question is, so what else do you want? And they go, wow. Oh yeah, I'm not sure. Wow, wow. So just it generates awe. That's his short form. But I don't want to hitch my wagon. But and what else? Awe. I call it the wow question because people go,
Ah,
wow, I can have something else. Well, yeah, you can. And I think that we all need to do that. We all need to let ourselves be a little awestruck. Something, maybe this sounds a little woo woo, but get up and watch the sunrise. Listen to kids laughing, have an ice cream. And when you're having these tough times in your life, when you're looking through, well, what do I do next? Take steps towards it, but also be judicious in saying, I'm paying the price. So every step I take is a price. Make sure you manage, make sure you use great tools like this. Make sure you listen to good podcasts and get great information. Put air in your tires.
absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I was just actually in California and I saw a sequoia for the first time. And I think I definitely felt that feeling you're talking about, where it just sort of grounds you that there are bigger things than what you might be going through right now, and that's helpful in its own way. And for those that I recommend please take a look at Chris's LinkedIn and the work he's done. If people want to reach out to you, Chris, is that okay to do through LinkedIn? If they want to learn more about
Absolutely.
response generators, and
Yeah.
I know we didn't get to touch too much on AI today, but that's playing its entirely own role in the job market and in career exploration and in job creation. Um, do you have anything you would like to say about that tool and how people can learn more about it?
Yeah, please feel free to connect with me. LinkedIn is great. My email is on there, and it doesn't have to be a reciprocity. It can just be, hey, let's talk about something that's really interesting and fun. Absolutely. I think that AI, to me, when we talk about storytelling, I always refer back to firekeepers. And when we decided as humans to cook meat and take psychedelics, that added into our humanity because we had time to dream. And
Yeah,
what AI is going to give us is that humanity back. Don't use these tools to short stroke what you're doing to just do more work for all that's holy and human. Do not do that. Take the time and go be a human being. So if you're a team leader, use AI to take 70% of your workload and go talk to your team. What are you doing? How can I help? What's exciting in your life? What's going on in your universe? One of my connections is Dr. Keith Thompson. He is the chief medical officer for Neurologics out of Toronto. They're developing a technology utilizing photoplasmography, which is a fancy word for taking a selfie to measure the blood flow in your skin. So let's
wow.
pretend for a moment you're in a remote area, you're an indigenous person perhaps. You don't necessarily have access to a doctor, but y'all got a cell phone. You take a
Huh.
picture, you upload it to this app, and it can showcase uh, symptoms of diabetes, lupus, stroke, anything that goes on with blood flow in the face. This can measure changes in blood flow remotely. There's another one in development that's a remote CT scanner. So you hook up, again, your cell phone to a remote CT scanner. And again, let's utilize indigenous people. They're remote and they are somewhat secluded from technology. Well, you have a heart problem. Well, Imran, that's terrible. You know what? Dr. Mike is going to be here and he's going to scan you with this cell phone, which then uploads it. Is it as good as a hospital CT? No. Is it better than nothing? Yes.
100%.
So we're creating all AI is helping people to see, it's helping people to think, it's helping people to create. But what are we going to do? My challenge to everybody is how are you going to be more human? How is AI going to make you more human? I just,
I couldn't
I
think
love
of a
that
better way.
question.
I love that too, and I couldn't think of a better way to think about AI. I think there's a lot going on around that topic, but considering it from that angle is exciting. And I think, yeah, I can't think of a better word for it. I think that's an exciting way to think about it.
It's amazing. The people that are leveraging some of these tools are doing so in such fabulous ways. I
Yeah.
literally watched a blind person hail a taxi holding his cell phone with the vision, the artificial augmented reality vision glasses, watching for the cab. The cab is coming. It's got a red light. It's number 5372. Safety,
Wow.
humanity. Uh, I mean, it's a knife that'll cut two ways, but I like to focus on how it's going to help us rather
Yeah.
than now. Truth be told, I might have renamed my internet connection here Skynet, just so if anyone tries to
You're
piggyback
ahead of the
on it,
curve.
they might say, "Oh, Terminator." But technology is
Uh,
just a tool. It's what we do with it. Fire, you can cook. I mean, that sequoia, that tree's older than the Romans.
it's no
So
joke. Yeah,
it puts a little perspective on things. So
absolutely.
you had a job before, you had a job after. The reality is that every job you've ever done is temporary. Every work you've never been paid what you're actually worth either, because that's capitalism. I mean, to take a Marxist bend, your labor is discounted because you make the company 100 widgets and they sell it for 1,000 hoozits. Well, your paycheck is 50 hoozits. Well, shareholders, taxes, and bills take the other 950. Is what it is. So don't. I guess my last parting shot across the bow. Don't let somebody else determine your worth. It's not a job. It's not. If you look at your child, do you think they care what you do? They just want to spend your time with them. So everything is in a lens. Everything is in comparison to something else. So when you're job seeking, just realize that they weren't ready for your jelly. You'll find the ones that are. Channel your inner Beyonce. You know,
That's
all the
fantastic.
single workers, all the single workers.
Uh, that could be a remix,
I
and
could
that may
do it.
bring us into our next episode to talk about
All
music
good.
there. But
Uh,
thank you so much, Chris. I owe
okay.
Andrew a huge thank you for recommending you.
Uh,
Really appreciate the time today. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. I will
I
let you
will.
go now. I'm not going to ask you another
Thanks, everyone.
question, even though
No,
I'm hoping to. But
yeah,
uh,
it's generally speaking, my friend. I'm generally speaking. Love to chat again on anything you have. Uh, Most people think that one person can't change the world, and that's why one person can't. Uh, Gandhi, Oprah, brother, you and I have the same amount of hours in our day that McConaughey does. All right, all right, all right.
you're not wrong.
It is what it is. I
So
just
true.
on a very quick last note, I did attend his Facebook event just because I love McConaughey.
I
I
saw
think
that. I didn't get a chance to check it out. What did you think?
I thought it was very good, and there was once, and it was a lead magnet. I mean, quite obviously, he's with Graziosi and he's with Banana Hands, Tony Robbins. There, I mean, Tony Robbins is like 70. I guess if you have a few, if you have a few million, you can stay healthy and causes less stress. Uh, he's an interesting cat as well. But what got me with McConaughey, and this is why I was talking about poking the bruise. We have a society which teaches us to avoid vulnerability, and we've, believe it or not, in my opinion, we've actually couched a victim mentality in avoiding that vulnerability. And I think we don't need to do that. I think we do need to be vulnerable, accept it, and then stand by it and let people not take limits with that vulnerability. Here's McConaughey's story. He's got this huge, amazing success as a movie star and can't handle it. Can't handle the pressures. Can't. So he takes off to go see this retreat in New Mexico, and just wants to be done with the world. This is years ago. He just can't stand it. Oh my gosh, what do I do? How do I do it? I can't find any emotional peace. And they say, oh, you're going to talk to Brother Christopher. Oh, okay, okay, and not me, but this guy. And he says,
Right.
oh, well, when's this guy available? He'll be available tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock. Oh my God! So he's sweating it out. No, what's he going to do? What's he going to say? 6 o'clock comes and he meets him. Hello, I'm Brother Christopher. He says, oh, I've been waiting. So what do we do? What do we do? He says, well, let's walk. Okay. So they walk, and Christopher says to him, he says, well, what did you want to say? And then McConaughey just barfs out for the next 4 hours about all the problems he's having. And the monk says nothing, just walks along and nods his head. So now McConaughey's wrung out like a washcloth. And he's like, oh my God. He's like, well, yeah, what do you, and at this point, the guy has said, hey, and then the guy has said, let's talk. McConaughey's filled this for 4 hours going, ah. So then the monk just leans in and says, me too. And McConaughey loses it. He said he couldn't because he was vulnerable. And the monk just said, yeah, that makes sense. So this validation of who he was as a human, as a person, we get so wrapped up in worth and value and what we can offer to other people, we totally forget that we're the most important part. And you give away so much.
Yeah.
This might be a topic for another time, and I'm keeping you. I apologize.
Uh,
True story. At the plant, I was fired 5 different times. My first promotion was because somebody else died of cancer, not making it up. And I spent 9 years on a night shift because of a 6-month management opportunity I took. So I paid the price. Those are all true. I'll elucidate on them later, but I've tried to live the width of my life as well as the length of it, and I'm so excited for what's going to happen when I turn 60. I don't know yet, man. I've already done some cool stuff, so we'll see
yeah.
what happens. It's
Well,
all
thanks
good.
again for sharing the
Yeah,
insights, Chris, and just for keeping the excitement high. I think that's what people need. So again,
yeah.
thank you for speaking with me
Anytime.
today.
Oh, Aaron, one of the best podcasts I've ever done, to be honest. I've done dozens, and this was just spectacular. I loved it, man. Your energy, the questions, the topics.
I
Uh,
appreciate that.
yeah. If you know anyone else that's looking for podcasting, or if you want to have me back,
Oh,
brother,
I definitely do.
just drop a
Yeah.
line, my man. We'll get her done. We'll plot the demise of the free world and bring them into In Stages audience membership roster. We'll get her done. Perfect.
Right on.
All
Well,
right.
thank you again, Chris. That sounds great, and I'll
Perfect.
let you know
All right.
when we're up for the next one.
Take care, my friend. Have a brilliant day. Safe weekend. Cheers.
You too. Have a great
Bye.
weekend.